Hi everyone, thanks for stopping by. I'm Sophie from Purina New Zealand. I'm one of the vet nurses working for Purina as part of the Petcare Advice team. Like most of you out there, I'm a pet owner as well. I've got a border collie called Kobe and a cat called Christian. Today I'll be having a chat with Dr. Alex of Grey Lynn VetCare, one of our Purina One ambassadors, about assessing your own cats and dogs for the 6 signs of health. After that, we'll take a look at some of the questions we've received from our community this week. If you do have any questions that haven't been covered, please comment below and we will get back to you once the interview is finished. How are you, Dr. Alex?
Hey, I'm good. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Shall we jump into it?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Awesome. So as a pet owner myself, as I said, I'm definitely guilty of a little bit of covered love with my pets. And as a vet nurse, I do know how important a healthy weight is. I'll admit my cat is a little bit tubby. How can our pet owners at home assess their own pets? And if they find they're a bit underweight or overweight, what are some changes they can make to help their
Yeah, sounds like we're talking about me as well.
pet?
Yeah, look, I think the easiest way where I usually look is around the rib line, and then where the rib line leads into the waist. So you want to see the cat or dog's body shape tuck in a little bit behind the rib, so they actually do have a semblance of a waist.
Yeah.
And you want to be able to almost see the ribs while they're standing, so you can push against the skin on the ribs, and they're just right there underneath it, but they're not very obvious. If you can't do that, and you're kind of like, oh, they've just got a whole lot of skin, that's really thick in that area, there's no fat there, there's just heaps of skin, you're lying to yourself. So
Yeah.
I find that a lot of people come in and say, no, I just thought that was skin, but there'll actually be a thickness to it that, if something's a few centimeters thick, it's not skin.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'll look. And then look, you've got to, if you're doing, you can adjust 2 things. You can adjust exercise and calorie burn. And then, but if you're in a situation where you're staying home a bit more and you can't exercise your animal a lot, you've got to adjust the calorie intake in that situation. So you've got to sort of feed to the condition of your individual pet as well, because while what you read on the bags will be a guideline to how much to feed them, just like in people, the quantity will vary a little bit depending on the individual. So you do have to, again, be honest with yourself about where you're at, and then make adjustments in the volume of food you're giving them.
Yeah, that's so true. And some pets are much better at sort of tricking you into thinking they're not getting quite enough. But yeah, you can tell.
Totally.
Yeah.
Mind control.
Yeah, exactly. So the immune system is a little bit harder because it's not something that's necessarily easy to see from the outside. What could our viewers do at home to assess their pet's immune health?
Yeah, like you say, that is a little bit harder, but I guess it's a little bit more subtle. You can still see external signs of a good immune system insofar as your pet looking extremely healthy, with their really, really shiny coat, super healthy skin, bright eyes, tons of energy, like really well-formed stools. All that sort of stuff will give you clues about the general health, and the immune system's going to be tied in with that. I guess the other clue is whether or not your cat or dog is getting ill quite a lot. Now that can range massively. Sometimes I've got pets that will come into me and maybe they get sick every 5 years, and then you've got others that are coming in every couple of months with stuff. So I think you got to weigh that up as well, and then maybe start to think about how diet can affect, and diet and potentially supplements can affect immune system function, and maybe start making some modifications there if you're worried. I think because it is more subtle than trying to look at body condition, use your vet, use us. That's where we can kind of get a little bit of a feel for things that may be a little bit more hidden,
Yeah, that's such a good point as well. Like when they're coming in for those annual health checks, those are all things that you'll be looking at.
Totally, yeah. So and the way you said that there is exactly right. That you might have your border collie coming in once a year because he's really healthy, and you're thinking, well, he's just coming in for his vaccines, but we're not really focusing on giving the vaccine. We could give a vaccine in a very short space of time once we ascertained that Kobe was healthy, you know. But we were spending a lot of time working from nose to tail, checking over things and getting a general feel for Kobe as well, you know. So
yeah,
that's a lot of that 15, 20, 30 minutes of time that we're spending when we do annual vaccinations and annual checkups. Yeah.
Yeah. So you did touch on the skin, coat, and the eyes. So what can our viewers be looking for?
Well, particularly with skin and hair, you know, you're looking at shine and luster, sort of. You're looking at whether it's got any broken ends and stuff. You're looking at scurf, you know, is there an absence of scurf or dandruff, or is there a presence? Is there any redness, inflammation, slight scabbing? Those are the main kind of signs that you'll see when you're having a good dig around the coat. And often that can be a product of, if it's there, if some of those problems are there, it could be allergies. That's a genuine thing to investigate. And sometimes we'll put those guys onto diets that are hypoallergenic, or that have like a novel protein source, a novel carbohydrate source. So you're trialing them on a different sort of food makeup to see if they react better. And making sure they've got plenty of stuff like essential fatty acids and things like that in their diet usually helps the luster of the skin and the coat a lot.
Yeah. And I know that there might be some people who haven't been able to get their dogs to their grooming appointments lately. Any
Yeah.
tips for maintaining their coats at home, or how they can keep on top of that?
Brushing.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any shortcuts, you know, like, yeah, I think you got to sit there, you know, people with German Shepherds will be cringing, but, you know, and put the work in, put the time into, even if they've got a really big thick coat like that, and just brush them. And sometimes use a strip comb, so you're getting a lot of kind of loose older hair out of the way, and cleaning a lot of any kind of debris out of the coat as well. So a cutting comb. Yeah, I think just doing the hard work yourself and then appreciating how good it is to be able to use groomers.
Yeah, exactly. They're a godsend, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know my own dog has a very thick, long coat, so I can sympathize.
Totally. So after this, you can sit down and spend the next couple of hours brushing
Yeah,
it.
that's right, and it is a
then,
couple of hours too.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and
Yeah.
then you'll be able to connect with everyone else who's on the same boat.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, he is getting on a little bit. He's 10 now, and he is sort of slowing down a little bit and starting to show some signs of arthritis.
Yeah.
What are some of the early symptoms that people can look out for to do with joint health?
Well, some of the earliest ones, because the inclination is to think, well, I can't see that he's in pain, so he must be fine. But as you've alluded to, what you're really trying to think about is what are the early symptoms, and sometimes that's just changes in routine, changes in behavior. So you'll suddenly he's not flying into the boot of the car, you know, or the tray of the ute or whatever you're driving around in. He's kind of hesitating, you know, so you give him a little lift. Possibly he's trying not to go up and down stairs as much as he used to. You might see postural change or gait changes, where when he's standing or walking or lying, he's just shifting his body slightly differently, maybe sitting one leg out to the side a little bit, taking some weight off the knees, you know, trying to move the hips around a little bit. Those signs are more subtle, and if you're kind of living a real busy life and you're charging around, and you won't necessarily click that that's a consistent change over the last few months, and that's a sign that he's starting to become a little bit sore, because these guys are very good at hiding pain.
Yeah.
It's not in their interest to you know, to let everyone around them know that they're sore, or they're not as powerful as they used to be, or not as strong as they used to be. So they're kind of inclined to hide it a lot, and so you do have to look for more subtle things.
Yeah, definitely. And I've noticed, you know, when we go out and play fetch and things like that, I do have to limit how much we play, because otherwise he doesn't feel it until much later on in the day. So yeah, we do have to careful to keep them happy and comfortable.
Yeah, that's a good point too, because working backwards like that's really important, so that that when they're warmed up, they're not going to notice it, and they're having such a good time. Let's charge through some bushes, let's go hard, But once they cool down, whether that's later that evening or potentially the next morning, that's a really good time to assess whether you have potentially overdone things a little bit, and then you can start to taper it back a bit if he's a bit stiff that night or the next morning. Then try halving the sort of volume of the exercise, or particularly with these older guys, just dropping the impact, dropping the intensity down a little bit. He could probably still go for a 2-hour walk and be fine. But if you're running around the park chasing a frisbee and he's doing a lot of sudden turns and jumps, he's going to react quite badly to that. So it's sort of about being clever about letting him do what he can actually handle.
Yeah, exactly. And linking it back into body condition, can you explain the impact that their weight can have on their joints as well?
Yeah, so it's just pure physics. It's just all that extra pressure driving down with the force of gravity through those joint surfaces and through those connective tissues that sort of tie everything together in those areas. And you can actually find, I've seen it many times, Labrador's a great example. Say you've got a 10-year-old lab who suddenly just doesn't really want to exercise very much and is really slow and stiff and sore. And while there's plenty of great medicines and plenty of great supplements that we can play around with and use in many cases where they are needed, often with those overweight dogs, which is why I use labs as an example, because they just love food so much, they'll pack it on. They look at food and they get heavier. So you get a bit of weight off. You might drop 4 or 5 Ks off one of those labs, which proportionately is an enormous amount. And suddenly the dog's actually moving around pretty well. So, as a vet, you get to see the end result of simply reducing weight, pressing down through the spine, pressing down through the joints, and how much difference it can make to a dog's comfort and mobility.
Yeah, that's so true. So like most pet owners, I do like to have a little cuddle with my pets and get amongst.
Good.
Nothing worse than
nothing wrong with that.
Bad breath.
It's like you're admitting to something terrible, but that's normal. Normal.
Yeah. Other than bad breath, what else can we be looking for to assess our pet's health?
Yeah, well, the mouth one's a good one, isn't it? Because there's a couple of main things that can be going on there. One is obviously dental disease, and as veterinarians, we can anesthetize these guys, clean a whole lot of muck off their teeth surfaces, and X-ray the teeth, pull out anything that's rotten, and make a big difference that way. But you can have an enormous impact on health of the mouth through really good quality dental chews, and you choosing diets that have an abrasive component to them, so that when they're chewing on those diets, the diet themselves, the food itself, is actually cleaning the teeth as such. And I can remember many decades ago when I first graduated vet school, and those diets for teeth were first coming out, I was a little bit skeptical. I was like, how can that make a difference? But trust me, over a long period of time, you can see the difference between looking in a cat or a dog's mouth that's on a good dental diet versus one that's not. There's other factors, there's genetics and injuries and stuff, but when you look at a large group like that over a long period of time, it makes a big difference. Also, just making sure that they're on a diet that they can digest really well, because sometimes you'll get cats and dogs that have really bad breath. You look in the mouth and everything actually looks pretty good, and what's happening is they're getting quite a lot of reflux from trying to eat diets that just doesn't suit that individual. And again, you can play around with low allergy diets or sensitivity diets where they're easier to digest and break down, and you can get some really good results with looking into that sort of thing as well.
That's you mentioned breath coming out this way as being an indication that maybe the diet's not quite suitable. And then there's the other way.
I see where you go. I knew where you were going with that. Yeah.
Which could be a sign that something else is going on. Is there any other way to sort of check if your dog or cat is on the best diet for them?
Well, like what we were talking about before about subtle signs, often you'll just see an animal come in and there'll just be mild general things that don't look 100%. The skin might not be looking great. The coat might be a little bit dry. For all intents and purposes, the animal's not really sick, but you can just tell that it's not looking quite as magnificent as it could. Yeah. And whenever you see that, then you start to ask more questions with an owner, and what are they on, and then start asking for specific signs that, like you've mentioned already, that may indicate a maldigestion or a dietary intolerance or something like that. And then if you're sort of hitting on some unanswered stuff there, then you can try adjusting the diet, putting them on a better quality diet, or a diet with novel proteins or novel carbohydrates that they might digest better.
And I mean, you can tell a lot from what's coming out the other end as well. Like how much and how often would you say is normal?
Anything from, I guess, 1 to 2 times a day for stools is pretty normal. If you've got obviously in puppies it's a lot more, but if you've got an adult dog that's doing more than that, that's a little bit strange. And pretty firm stools would be normal as well. So again, if they're a bit loose and it's a continual process of things being a bit loose for weeks and then maybe months, I'd be having a good look at some dietary manipulation in that case. And as you alluded to, if there's plenty of gas coming out and lots of bloating in the abdomen and things like that, then you can kind of say, well, look, that doesn't look like they're breaking this down very well. Let's try something better,
So I mean, we do offer free advice to our consumers at Purina, and I just thought we could have a chat about some of the questions that we've had recently.
Sure.
And going back to toileting again, we do get contacts from time to time about cats especially that either don't want to use the litter tray, or they maybe use it once and then they start going somewhere inappropriate. I know that there are lots of things that we can try. What are your top tips for changing that behaviour?
Okay, well, look, sometimes it's simple. So you always try the simple things first, right? Because you're more likely to get a hit on one of these. So you try having 2 litter trays instead of 1, because sometimes the cat has done wheeze in the litter tray already. No one's cleaned it, and then it wants to do number 2s. It doesn't like it because it's already done number 1s in there. Cats can be as complex as that. So having 2 trays, sometimes it just helps. Or maybe one of the trays is in the area where there's quite a lot going on a lot of the time. It's not very private. You could, and the other thing that works sometimes with that is to use a covered tray. So there'll be like it's like a little igloo almost. There's a little cat flap. Yeah. And so some cats would prefer that because of privacy. Certainly trying different types of litter material can really help. Some will love ripped up bits of paper, others will want beads, others will like more dirt, sort of clay type products, or recycled tree products. So you kind of got to play around with that a little bit, and sometimes that'll help. Making sure the litter tray is actually really easily accessible to the cat as well, because especially if it's an older cat, sometimes people will think, oh yeah, you could just run over there and get into that, but it might be a little bit stiff or sore, in the joints, and not want to move into that particular area of the house. Stuff like that is really what you work on to begin with.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, you dropped out for a second. There you are.
Apologies. Yeah.
That's okay. So what are some reasons, I know that we talked about skin before. What are some reasons that a dog will develop irritated skin? And what things can our viewers do at home to help narrow down the cause of that?
Yeah, there's heaps of things. I mean, again, the most common thing is actually grass,
Yeah.
So you're in a situation immediately, if that's the case, where first of all, it could be an allergy to 5 different types of common grasses. And you don't want your dog to not run around in the park, right? Or to be off the concrete sometimes if you're living in the city. So you can be in a situation where it immediately becomes about management of the skin condition, because it's just not practical to remove the initiating cause, you know, or you'd have to keep them in a bubble, basically, in a sort of a you know, sterile environment, and he'd miss out on all his blooming fun stuff, and he'd be depressed, right? So no one wants that. You want your dog to be happy. So yeah, you can play around with I guess particular places to visit. So sometimes it's a matter of being a little bit of a detective. And in my area up in the middle of the city, there's particular parks where you know that there's a lot of bizarre plants and swampy areas and mini waterways and things. And when dogs go there, you know, they're much more likely to react to something unusual there. So sometimes you can say, well, let's stick to mowed grass, you know, let's hang out in Grey Lynn Park versus down at Miller Reef, and you can make changes to the routine of the dog so it still gets all its outside time, but it's getting removed from particularly nasty triggers. If that's not working, then usually you want to get your vet involved, because there's such a big deductive process here, looking at parasites potentially, you know, so fleas, and then, you know, again, it can just be a primary dietary problem as well, where the skin allergy is a food intolerance, or very, very rarely a true food allergy. So there's and sometimes it's not like we will necessarily know, but we'll have a good look. We'll look at the patterns on the skin. We'll use our experience, and we'll kind of narrow it down so that we go, well, let's try this first. And then typically you're trialing a change, and then you're looking for a response, you know. Yeah.
So a bit of trial and error, and just sort of seeing, like, if I eliminate this one thing,
yes,
this effect, and then just kind of working through the list, eh?
Correct, but you've got to be really exact. So if I say to you, hey, we're only going to do this diet and nothing else, it doesn't mean this diet plus a whole lot of treats made out of all sorts of things, and then some milk, and then some bits of cheese at night, and then a couple of sausages off the barbecue. It means that diet plus water and nothing else for probably for 6 weeks. And then we're going to have a talk, and then we're going to see where we're at. Did it work? Did it not work? But if you're not up for being that strict, then it's a waste of time.
Yeah, it can be quite a hard one to get to the bottom of sometimes, can't it?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us today. As I mentioned before, Purina is available with our vet nurses if you've got any questions. You can call 0800 738 847, email askpurina@nz.nestle.com, or you can chat to us over Facebook. Of course, just like to remind you, if you are concerned about your pet's well-being at all, your vet should be your first port of call, and they are available at the moment as well. So thanks.
We sure are.
Thanks again for watching. We really hope you found it useful. Take care, and we'll talk soon.
See ya.